this is our first lecture of the series. It gives us immense pleasure and a deep sense of academic pride to welcome you all today's lecture under the lecture series on excavations in Western India. We are truly honored to have with us Dr. Arti Deshpande Mukherjee Madam. She's my teacher also in Deccan College. Uh, a distinguished archaeologist and archaeozoologist who currently in serve as associate professor at Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, Pune. She earned her PhD in archaeology from Deccan College with pioneering doctoral research on application of molluscan studies in archaeology, particularly in the context of Western India. With over 3 decades of dedicated research and teaching, Dr. Deshpande Mukherjee has made outstanding and lasting contribution to the field of archaeozoology, archaeomalacology, environmental archaeology, Harappan studies, ethnoarchaeology, and coastal archaeology. She has successfully led a collaborate on several prestigious national, international research projects supported by eminent funding agencies such as ICHR, UGC, DST, and the Archaeological Survey of India of Ministry of Culture. Madam is widely respected scholar who presented her research at numerous national and international conferences, delivered invited lectures at leading academic institutions in India and abroad, and authored an impressive body of scholarly publication in reputed journals and edited volumes. Her work has significantly advanced our understanding of human-animal interactions, subsistence strategy, trade network, and environmental adaptations in South Asian archaeology. Today's lecture offers a rare, valuable opportunity for scholar and students alike to benefit from her vast experience and deep insight. On behalf of Indian Council of Historical Research, Western Regional Center, Pune, it is my privilege to extend warm and respectful welcome to Dr. Arti Deshpande Mukherjee, ma'am. So I would like to request, ma'am, kindly, it's now hand over to you, kindly guide us or deliver your lecture on excavations at Somnath. Thank you, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
A very good morning. Thank you, Nilesh, for this introduction. And it really felt nice to hear about my own contributions. At the onset, I would really like to thank the ICHR for this invitation to present in this podium. It has been quite some time that when I did my excavations at Somnath, it was a very humble effort on a very small footing, because in India we see that such big excavations are being regularly carried out, but this was a very small scale excavations with a lot of aims to understand paleo environment, climate, subsistence, and so many other aspects. So with this, I begin my talk. Let me just please give me a moment.
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
Oh, Nilesh, you'll have to help me because I'm doing this after a very long time.
It's okay, ma'am.
that I can't see my presentation. Anyway,
Ah,
can you see it?
yes, ma'am. Now,
Okay, so I will be speaking on Somnath Revisited, results of the archaeological explorations and excavations at the coastal settlement of Somnath, Gir Somnath district in Gujarat. So Somnath, many of us are familiar, especially in the Indian subcontinent, that this is a very famous Shaiva shrine. It is a very important pilgrimage center for most Indians, and it is also one of the 12 Jyotirlingas. So it always has a lot of pilgrims coming from all across the country visiting it. And but Somnath has also been in referred in many of our literature. It has a lot of historical significance. It was very significant even during the medieval times. So it has a long history, um, which talks about its, inscriptional evidences which have been found, the kind of monuments which have been, found at this particular settlement. And also we see a lot of temples, forts, stepwells, and so many architectural monuments are visible in this region. And so that is why Somnath has always remained a very important place where both religious tourism is concerned, as well as archaeologically, historically, it has a lot of significance. It has even more got more importance. Like when I was a child reading in our Amar Chitrakatha comics, we were often told that it had faced a lot of destruction under the invading forces of Muhammad Ghazni's armies. So the temple has also has encountered a lot of repeated reconstructions were made by different dynasties of that particular time. So during the historical times and in the early medieval period, when the temple was very much in focus, uh, a lot of activity, religious activity was taking place around this particular temple. uh, Pilgrims were coming. There were it was also a very, because of the patronage from the local kings, it was a very uh, uh, affluent place. There was also reporting of piracy along this coast. So it was a very vibrant region during both the historical and medieval times. And as I said, archaeologically also, we have a lot of evidence to show the kind of vibrant activity which was there during the medieval period. And here we one interesting aspect has always been is that there were bilingual inscriptions in both Sanskrit and Arabic, which have been reported from this particular place. And in medieval times, it is also recognized as a very important port. Besides this, there must be so much other information is available from literary accounts, textual sources, from foreign travelers' accounts. Looking at Somnath, location of Somnath, it is located on the Saurashtra coast, overlooking the Arabian Sea. It is located a few kilometers, nearly around 15-20 kilometers south of the present-day port of Veraval. It is located now in the Gir Somnath district of Gujarat. Earlier, it was in the Junagadh state, but then it has been made into this included into this particular district. It is a coastal settlement which is located at the mouth of the river Hiran, which you see here. And the whole region, if you see, is um, a very fertile region with a lot of orchards. Different fruits are grown here, like you have coconuts, arecanut, palms, mangoes are also famous from this region. Adjoining this coastal strip, we also have the famous Gir forest, which houses the Gir lions. So Environmentally, presently also it, unlike most places in Gujarat, this particular region enjoys a very, very favorable climate, and the region is also agriculturally very rich. So Somnath, the town, is also known as Prabhas Patan, and it is a small town where the main temple is located. Today, the temple which you see is the modern temple, which was again rebuilt during the 1950s, just after partition. And the town is located all alongside it. It is a very densely populated thing, re- uh, town, which has got a lot of people, mostly subsisting by working in the temple and doing agricultural activities. So these are some of the monumental monuments which are located in and around Somnath, very rich in a series of temples, rock cut caves. You have, step wells. A lot of sculptures have been found here, and you also see some medieval remnants of forts, fort walls, and things like that. Now, coming to the previous research, we find that one of the earliest work was done when these temples were recorded by in the 19th century by Burgess and later by Henry Cousins, especially the famous temple of Nagar Aditya, which is located on the river Hiranya. That is where the first excavation was carried out. And it is in the early 1930s, we find that Sri Hiranand Shastri of the State Archaeology Department of Gujarat, he was carrying out explorations, and he took a small trench on the further south of Somnath at a place called Muldwarka, which is also historically important. And he also, during his explorations, came across, pottery suggesting of the early historic period. Following his discoveries, it was in the 1950s that when there was a lot of, focus on trying to revive the temple, which had been destroyed so many times in the past. And so, with this, excavations were proposed by the Archaeological Survey of India, and they were carried out by B.K. Thapar, very close to the present day temple. Following it, we find that it is between the 1970s, that in the 1970s, it was Deccan College with the Gujarat State Department, which also carried out excavations. And both the excavations which were done in the 1950s by Thapar and later by, even their own Gujarat State Department as well as MS University, Baroda, they uh, were able to show that the antiquity of Somnath was not just confined to the medieval period, but goes back much further in time. It was taken as far back as the Chalcolithic period. They were able to show that there were at least five periods, cultural periods, which were identified, out of which the earliest time period goes to the pre-Prabhas culture, indicating, and this was done on the basis of the kind of pottery which they have found. And this showed that somewhere maybe there was some early settlements of the early Harappan people and even people um, prior to them, which was followed by the Chalcolithic people. There were the copper using people who came and started living in this region, and which was followed later by the Iron Age people, and then coming down to the early historic period when the settlement must have become started slowly expanding. So all these investigations were basically done not on the coast, but they were done a little few kilometers inside on the river Hiran. These excavations were carried out, and the kind of settlement which they were able to reconstruct and show was that it was linear, it was moving along the margins of the river. And so these five cultural periods became very important, and for the first time we did get some idea as to the cultural history of this particular region. And later on, we find that, Professor Dhavlikar also carried out excavations at this particular site, but unfortunately, the report was never published, and um information regarding the pre-Prabhas culture and even maybe the presence of Harappans in this particular region, because this is quite way out for the Harappans to come and settle down here. This information, unfortunately, we do not have uh, much information about it anymore till some further work is done. Following that, we find that explorations, geoarchaeological investigations were taken again carried out by my own institute under the supervision of Professor Rajguru, Professor Marathe, and people from PRL, and so they were also able to give some idea as to the kind of Professor Papu also, they were able to give some idea as to how what was the human land relationship along the Somnath coast during the Quaternary period more than 10,000 years ago. They found some Paleolithic artifacts were found, and so these discoveries does all these discoveries put together does indicate that this region was having a long antiquity of cultural occupation. There have been different people occupying this area, living there, and but unfortunately, we find that after the 80s, not much work was done here further, except for some offshore explorations which were done by NIO, locating anchors and some, structures below the sea. So this sort of brought a research to a halt in this region. Now, as I had earlier mentioned, that Somnath is such an iconic temple town, and there are so many visitors visiting it. And in the last, I think, 10-15 years, the footfall has increased even much further, because of which the government is carrying out a lot of development activities in this region. A lot of areas are being converted into construction sites. Even the agricultural land is also being taken over for building resorts and things like that. So this is bound to happen. We cannot go against such kind of developmental changes because of the demands from the heavy footfall which is happening in this region because of its tourism and people wanting to come and visit the temple. So because of this, what we are also seeing is that a lot of agriculture, archaeological remains in this region are undergoing, facing slow destruction. They are being obliterated from the landscape because of all these developmental and construction activities. So that is why in 2010, I decided to take up some explorations along the Somnath coast, because my main interest as an archaeozoologist is I'm always trying to look for that what were the kind of coastal sites we have and how much of subsistence is based on either marine resources, whether it be fishing, shellfish gathering, or some other resources, or was it only based on, you know, uh, exploitation of terrestrial mammals. So with this ideas in mind, I wanted to carry out a survey of this particular coast to locate such kind of settlements, giving me this kind of evidence, also to look for any kind of shell middens along this region, because it is a very straight coast. It is very rich in molluscan resources. You get all kinds of clams, oysters. Fishing is also a very, very important activity today along this. So if we can find such kind of evidences in the archaeological record, that would be even more interesting. So this was to do locate coastal sites and also to document any kind of archaeological remains which we can see in this particular region, which maybe after a few years you may not be able to see. I was also interested in carrying out a small scale excavation on the coast so as to get, both biological material as well as archaeological material, which would again further enhance our understanding about this particular site. Because if you see the kind of excavations which were carried out in this region, it is more towards the inland area that is further upstream of the Hiran River. Not much work has been done on the direct coast itself. So this was my objective. I also wanted to get some chronology for this site, because the previous excavations have not generated much of any radiometric dates. In the 1950s excavations, all the cultural chronology has been based mostly on relative dating by comparing with ceramics and things like that. So to try and get some dates for this settlement, and to overall to reconstruct not only the cultural history but also what was the coastal environment around Somnath, what were the subsistence pattern of these people during the historic period as well as in the medieval period. Do we see any kind of changes in their lifestyle? So these were some of these broad questions which I wanted to address by carrying out both explorations as well as excavation at in this particular region. So carried out surface explorations where we did come across, and in this endeavor, I would like to thank my colleague, she is a retired professor, Professor Sushama Deo, who has been involved in this exploration. We surveyed all the region between Veraval and as far as Dwarka also, and we did locate a lot of pottery. We found a lot of evidence for shell working very close to the present temple, which is at Somnath, and we also found a lot of red polished ware, shirts, something like these sprinklers. So the surface of these um, area in and around the temple did show that there is some evidence of past activity, and this needed to be recorded because by 2012 we found that much of the landscape had been completely changed. There were parking lots being made in these places where we had already found a lot of pottery. We were finding shell remains. So we needed to really do our documentation as quick as possible so as to not to lose this kind of evidence which was slowly being obliterated. So these are some of the explorations. So very close to the temple. This is a picture which was taken somewhere in 2010, and today it is looks very different. Uh, what we found was that just next to the temple there was a huge deposit which was of the medieval period, and this particular deposit contained a lot of pottery, it contained a lot of animal bones, shells. So this is what attracted us, and so there we decided to do section scraping in order to get some material and find out its cultural context. So here we really would like to thank the Somnath Trust at uh, Somnath, who gave us permission to, carry out this kind of section scraping. They helped us. They provided us also with labor. They were very, very cooperative because when I first met them, I even showed them the Nanavati's report on Somnath, and I said that we need to do this kind of work so that all these remains are not lost forever. So, with their cooperation, a lot of help was available to us during both our explorations as well as our excavations. So from this section scraping, we could get a lot of pottery, and interestingly, we found these some of these glazed ware ceramics. These are mostly of the medieval period. We found glazed ware ceramics indicating some kind of West Asian contacts. We also found Chinese ceramics. Also, I'm not a ceramic expert, but some basic identification has been done with the help of Dr. Derek Kennett from the University of Durham, and we also found a lot of shells, bones, cowrie shells, fish bones, something like We also saw the presence of the shark vertebrae in the deposit. So this deposit would give us a whole, you know, account of the kind of medieval activities which might have been going on the coast, very close to the temple. Because when we went back to it in 2012-13, we found that the whole deposit had been completely flattened out and it is no longer there. So this was a very good way of getting a preserving this record by carrying out this study. Then in 2014, following permission from both the Archaeological Survey of India and the Gujarat State Archaeology Department, as well as even we also got permission from the Somnath Trust, we decided to excavate close to the town, close to the temple. It is just behind the parking lot, and it is somewhere here. This is the mouth of the Hiran River. So just behind the temple, you have the parking lot, huge parking lot, and adjoining it, you see these vast empty spaces. I'm not sure how it is now because this was in 2014, and these were being quarried for the meliolite limestone, and it is on these meliolite deposits that some amount of cultural deposits still can be found, and it is here that we decided to carry out our excavation. The earlier site, which was excavated both by Nanavati et al. As well as Professor Dhavrikar, it was further upstream of the Hiran River, somewhere here. So our site, we decided to dig it much more closer to the shore. So it was on the top of this meliolite exposure that we took a 2 by 2 meter trench, and it overlooks this whole. It's a very undulating landscape, and it is in these um, at the bottom of it that you find a lot of pottery. You find a lot of shell material, suggesting shell working activities, which must have come probably washed away from such kind of high level deposits which are there in this particular region. So we started doing our excavation, and it was a just a small trench which we had taken. We went to nearly 2 meters, 2.5 meters, and what we found was that we started encountering a lot of meliolite stones, sandstones also, and it helped us to first trace one wall in the floor. Decided we also found one pot, and then we also located a hearth in this. So our excavations from this, we could recover a lot of pottery, animal bones, shells, cultural material like beads, bangles, and so on. So we, after reaching nearly 2.5 meters, we decided to close the to halt the excavation because we had literally reached the virgin soil. We were able to expose this wall which was there, and maybe if we had been able to had the opportunity to extend, continue the excavations in the next season, we would have been able to even further explore this wall and maybe expose some more structures, but unfortunately we could not do that. So our information remains only with this particular trench which we had taken. So very systematically samples were collected for radiocarbon dating, such as we could collect a lot of charcoal. We also collected soil samples for obtaining botanical material, as well as bones, ceramics, and so forth. So these were our digwise archaeological findings. So it does show that the cultural material, in spite of from such a small trench, we could retrieve a variety of materials like bangles, beads, stone beads, glass beads, then terracotta beads, especially the arecanut beads, some iron objects, bone objects, and as well as shell bangles. So these are the kind of pottery which has been recovered This is mostly of the redware type. Some of them are very finely made, some of them are quite coarse. And for this pottery, the study was carried out by Dr. Gurudas Shetty from the Deccan College. He was one of the part of the excavation team, and he has carried out a very detailed study of the pottery from this particular site. We also were able to get a black and redware shirt. We also got one pottery with this graffiti mark. These are some of the objects which have been found. Like we have this terracotta toy cart wheel, then we have these arecanut beads, shell bangles, glass, and carnelian bead. Now, as one of the aims was to get some chronology for the site and for this region, since we had collected charcoal samples, one sample was sent to Beta Labs in Florida, and we got this date of this particular date, which is of the early part of the Christian era, around 40 to 80. And this definitely shows that this occupation was of the early historic period. Since as an archaeozoologist, I was very much interested in the kind of archaeozoological remains coming from this particular settlement, that are they very different from what we get at other sites located inland, at other proto-historic settlements, because we have a lot of Harappan sites which have been excavated in Gujarat, but less of early historic sites. And many of these early historic sites were excavated quite some time ago, when the whole idea about even doing archaeozoological studies or archaeobotanical studies was not one of the excavators' aims. So much of these remains have never been studied at all. So for an early historic settlement, this was one of the studies which needed to be done. So as I said, we found large quantities of animal skeletal parts like bones, teeth, horn cores, antlers, shells, and they all show very good preservation because of the calcareous nature of the soils. These are showing here. You can see that in the middle depths of the trench, the representation of bones was much more. As many as nearly 20 species have been recovered and identified, and these show that they were mostly belonging to the domestic animals like cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, donkey, dog, as well as we also pigs, as well as we also see bones of wild animals like the nilgai, antelope. So here you can see some of the bones with deep cut marks suggesting butchering activities. We have the deer antler, we have the mandible of a pig. So a lot of bones with cut marks, charring marks indicate that these were part of their diet at the settlement, and large proportion of pigs as well as cattle as well as sheep goat suggest that these were the main constituents of the diet of the people in this region. We also found a lot of molluscan shells, mostly the turbo, then some of these venerate clams. We also found cowrie shells. We also got shells belonging to this rock oyster. Now, shells, along with getting shell bangles, does suggest that the local people were getting some of these shells probably as food purposes, something like the turbo shells, as well as some of these clams, which can be found in backwaters, brackish waters, and can be brought to the site as food. For example, even these oyster shells, so they must have also contributed to the diet of the people. And since this site which we have excavated was lying very close to the Hiran River, it suggests today the Hiran River is completely dry. Probably it gets water only during the monsoon season, when the sea sort of comes inside, and maybe the Hiran has some water of its own during that time. But year round, you find that the riverbed is completely dry. But what, from the presence of such kind of, presence of freshwater bivalves which are there, and gastropod shells, it does suggest that the rivers were having plenty of water to sustain these kind of mollusks, aquatic resources. We also have got bones of turtles, freshwater turtles, which again are an indication of, that the river nearby was sufficiently well watered to sustain these particular populations. Now, presence of oyster shells, we also have these small potamid gastropods, which suggests that at the mouth of the river, Hiran River, probably there must have been existence of mangroves also because of a kind of a brackish water environment. And these also areas become very good areas for collecting particular shells of, say, telescopium or oysters, which can be also eaten. Today, of course, you don't see any of these mangroves in close to the Hiran River, but there is a possibility that in the past such kind of habitat had existed close to the settlement. An interesting thing was that we do get fish bones. Many of them we have identified them as being of freshwater origins, but we do get a few ones which show that they were marine fish, and we have identified them as those of shark. Our excavation, of course, did not give us any um, fishing tools like hooks and things like that, because the previous excavation which was done by Nanavati, they, in their report, they mentioned having a copper fish hook was found during the Chalcolithic period. So we find that even deep sea fishing was done by the inhabitants at this particular settlement during the early historic times. And the sea here is fairly deep as compared to, many other places. So the whole idea of seafaring and fishing activities was very much existing even during the early historic times. Of course, it became more common during the medieval period when uh, Somnath became a port, a medieval port. Coming to the salient features uh, of this particular study, we find that definitely after the Chalcolithic period and the Iron Age period, which was exposed in a cultural deposit located quite far inland from the coast, we find that there was an early historic habitation existing on the right on the coast, very close to the present day temple. Earlier, we didn't have any dates, but our charcoal dates are supporting this particular assumption that it is an early historic settlement. And the kind of finding of so much of pottery, especially uh, evidences related to activities like bead making, shell working, are being found at this in this vicinity of the site, as well as at in the excavation also, which suggests that shell working was being carried out during the early historic period at Somnath, because Somnath, compared to many other places, located very further, but it must have had some access to getting the large marine gastropod, that is the junk shell Turbinella pyrum, all the way from the Dwarka coast, which is just like a straight line if you take from Somnath to Dwarka. So it is maybe through some kind of trade contacts, they must have been able to procure these shells. And during the historic period, there was a major industry existing at Dwarka, sorry, at Somnath as well. Now, the animal remains which have been excavated and studied, we find that they had a very mixed subsistence economy was being practiced by the people. It subsisted on keeping of cattle, sheep, goat, rearing of pigs, and doing some kind of semi-pastoral activities also. They were even carrying out hunting of wild animals, because you find that, as I had said earlier, that close to this Somnath region, we find that it is adjoining a famous Gir forest, and it is in this forest that many of these animals, which are represented in our collection, are also living there even today. Animals like nilgai, antelopes. Of course, we didn't find any lions in our collection, unfortunately, but we have gaur and some very interesting wild animals also represented. So it is quite likely that the inhabitants were also venturing into the forested areas for hunting of these animals to supplement their dietary inputs requirements. We also see exploitation of both marine as well as freshwater resources by the inhabitants. So we are seeing fishing, shellfish gathering, even crabs are also found in the excavation. And people were carrying out deep sea fishing, which also hints at the possibility of that these might be some kind of maybe fishing settlements, which we find them all across the all coastal areas of Gujarat today are inhabited by coastal fishermen. So it might have been some kind of a small fishing settlement also. And presence of glazeware and Chinese ware indicate of the medieval period indicate that there was uh, trade which was happening, and this is of course supported by a lot of textual references, foreign accounts of travelers. There is the particular inscription, very famous inscription of 1264 AD, which speaks about uh, owner of ships who's known as a Nakhoda, who had traveled to Somnath all the way from the Hormuz Straits in the Persian Gulf, and who helped build a mosque at Somnath. And the description, interestingly, the inscription is both in Arabic as well as a description of it is also given in Sanskrit, sort of telling the people as to how it is being built, and also writing about its upkeep and so many things. So this does suggest that and supports that there was a regular trade which was also going around with West Asia, regular maritime trade. Somnath was involved. We also have references of the Kadamba kings all the way from Goa traveling to Somnath because of its religious sanctity and being a pilgrimage place. There were people coming from all across parts of Deccan visiting Somnath. So you have inscriptions even in the Deccan region which mention Somnath in the historical inscriptions, and even in the early medieval inscriptions you find Somnath being mentioned not only as a place of for religious activity but also commercial activities, trade activities. And so that is why it is really a need is felt that this particular region needs to be further explored. It requires some kind of more major excavations to be carried out so as to get more information about the activities which were going around in this part of Saurashtra, because we find that there's so much of work which is being done on the Indus Valley civilization, which is at sites in the Kutch region in North Gujarat, where recently the site of Vadnagar was extensively studied. But these settlements which are there on the Saurashtra coast, quite far off, also had played a very important role in the cultural activities during both the historical and the medieval periods. So definitely we find that the excavation carried out by myself along with my colleagues and the previous explorations and excavations done by previous scholars also supports that definitely Somnath had a very long occupational history, and we can even take it back to the Paleolithic times, because you're finding Paleolithic tools in some of the adjoining river valleys close to the Somnath region. and it did have some kind of a Harappan occupation, followed by a Chalcolithic settlement, going well into the Iron Age, and then coming around to the medieval period. And it is because of the cultural activities which were going during the early historic period, which led to it becoming a very prosperous place during the historical times as well as the medieval times, and its location on the sea coast um, made it a very important place for religious activities, for maritime activities. It also received a lot of patronage from the local kings, and but unfortunately, because of the repeated invasions during the early medieval times, did change a lot of its history. And but the settlement continued to grow, and what we see today is a legacy of its rich cultural past. So with this, I finish my um, talk on the excavation. Here is a photograph of our team. I would like to also give my acknowledge Professor S.N. Rajguru, who has been was Professor late S.N. Rajguru. He was also my teacher and one of the most great human being who has been very, very encouraging in all my research activities. My ex-colleague, retired Sushama Dev, Professor Sushama Dev, then my present colleagues, Doctors Gurdas Shetty, Reshma Sawant, and my own students, Shaumi Sengupta, who helped during the excavations, who jointly carried out. And I also like to acknowledge the help of Mr. Dr. Sachin Joshi, Dr. Shrikant Pradhan, and Oishi in this research. Again, I wish to acknowledge the Archaeological Survey of India, the Gujarat State Department of Archaeology, University Grants Commission for providing the funding, Deccan College Pune for always providing support, the Somnath Trust at Somnath, and the people of Somnath for their warmth and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It is always we are excited to listen you about the Somnath. So it's very informative and it's really uh, helpful to the researchers, students about this excavation. So I would like to conclude this session, today's session, with the very uh, thank you very much, ma'am. You accept our invitation to deliver this lecture. We talk on the excavation at Somnath. So provides a valuable insights into contemporary lifestyle while also combining significantly to environmental and landscape studies. It's like you talk about the Somnath from around 2000 years history in your presentation. So if you think about the Somnath and today's it's a great pilgrim center, so it's not only developed today only, so it has a long 2000-year history of that landscapes. And not only you talk about the material culture, along with that you did very minor meticulously scientific studies of bones and other findings to that. And it's very exciting that you had uh, sea-footing dating of the site. So it gives absolute dating along with the that material that is open the new direction to study of the region uh, of the region in this vicinity around the Somnath. So once again, I am very thankful to on behalf of Indian Council of Historical Research Western Regional Center to deliver this lecture. Also, I would like to be thanks our Honorable Chairman Professor Raghavendra Tamwar and Member Secretary Professor Omji Upadhyay to give us a permission to organize this and initiate this lecture series on this platform. Also, that I would like to special thanks to Dr. Naushad Ali, is controlling officer of our office, to always support me to initiate this type of programs. And I further thanks to all scholar, faculty members, students, and participants for their presence in these lectures. So once again, I would like to thank you, madam, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Nilesh, and thank you to the ICHR also for the invitation to participate. And yeah, best wishes.
Thank you, ma'am.